I want to welcome everybody here this morning to the Google D.C. office. My name is Adam Kovakovich, Senior Manager for Communications and Public Affairs based here in our Washington office. Probably the best way for me to introduce today's guest is by asking a few questions of those of you in the audience today. By a show of hands, how many of you have ever sold a piece of furniture on Craigslist? How many of you have ever found a roommate or an apartment on Craigslist? Good. And how many of you have ever found a job on Craigslist? What about your current job? Current job? Yeah. How many of you have ever found a date on Craigslist? Oh, only one person. Only one person. Now, what about misconnections? Is anybody willing to admit to filing a misconnections? One person. All right. Well, as I think everybody is well aware, almost anything you can think of can be found on Craigslist, and its impact can be seen in those hands being raised, as well as in the postings that we were showing on the screens before we started. So today we're going to hear from the man who started it all. He's won a lot of accolades, and one of the most interesting and noteworthy and most recent is that Business Week just named him one of the 25 most influential people on the web. So please join me in welcoming Craig Newmark, founder of Craigslist. So Craig, for a Washington audience here that's used Craigslist but may not be that familiar with sort of how the site got started, tell me a little bit about what you were doing before you started the site, what gave you the idea, and how the site got started.
Basically, the history is that in 1994, I was at Charles Schwab and Company, the discount brokerage, and I was going around the place evangelizing the net, saying that, hey, any kind of brokerage is an information business and would be migrating to the net in large part. I also saw a lot of people helping each other out on the Well, an early virtual community, and Usenet news groups. And so I figured when around the time 95 rolls around, I figure I'll give back a little to the community, start a simple CC list, telling people about what I thought were cool events in San Francisco, usually arts and technology ones. And over time, it started spreading around. I listened to feedback and did something about that. Listened to more feedback, did something about that, and then just kept doing that over and over again. And that's our pattern as we operate today. I should mention these days, my job is primarily customer service, and I'm a customer service rep. My boss is the boss of customer service, but that's what I spend my time doing. I haven't done any customer service, though, for about 20 or 30 minutes. But the deal is my system is still running right now, only about 50 feet from here. I will mention, since this is in honor of Google and Marissa Meyer, that the email tool I used back then is called Pine, which both she and I use right now. I've told her that's hot, and I have her on video to that effect.
So in your customer service role, what exactly does that entail? Is it people who've had problems posting things? And when people get a response email from Craig, are they surprised?
It entails a whole bunch of things. A lot of it is removing spam ads. A lot of it is in moderating our discussion boards. And then there's a lot of ad hoc cases, people wondering why their ads were removed, that kind of thing. And
then tell us a little bit about sort of how the site has grown, both in its scale, particularly internationally, over the years.
Okay. It grows slow but sure in the race between tortoise and hare. We're the tortoise. Just slow, gradually. The first few years, just me running it as a volunteer. And in fact, one of the first milestones I ever noticed, end of '97, we were getting about 1 million page views per month. It's 1 million. And that was pretty good back then. In middle of 2004, we hit about 1 billion page views per month. And now we're getting about 12 billion page views per month. Our international traffic growth has been slow, One reason being is that we don't promote the site. Another reason is that until last November, we had no internationalization, no languages other than English. Then, in November last year, we introduced Spanish, and then a few languages since. But it's growing slow, and actually that suits us in a way because, we're just trying to give people a break, and we don't want to push ourselves on people.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that's been interesting over the last couple months for heavy internet users was the Facebook redesign, and there was a bit of a backlash among some people for them redesigning the site. And Craigslist's design has remained very spare over the years. Have you ever thought about changing it? Have you ever asked your users or done any trials to change the look of the site, or is that something you're dead set against doing?
Well, the history is simply that 13 years ago, I was painfully aware that I have no design skills, and I know how to keep things simple, so that's what I figured I'd do. Jim Buckmaster, my giant CEO, feels the same way and keeps things going. Jim, is a full foot taller than me. We make a good comedy team in appearance, although you will see photos of us, for the record, where eye level, I'm standing on a box. And I generally request that be in the photo. But the simplicity thing, well, a few years ago, South by Southwest, there were some pretty good web designers who did a good design. And we ask people, and people in the community just don't care. They want a site which is really simple and fast. Some people in the design community cared. But again, we're driven in pretty much everything we do by the community. I had a couple good ideas 13 years ago. Jim has good ideas as to our future. The tech guys do a lot of sophisticated, powerful stuff underneath the covers that you don't see, like to keep the seed fast. Otherwise, we want to get to the point and fast, because we're all hit by too much media. We're all, I'm sometimes overwhelmed by too much media and too much speed about it. That's one reason I don't do much texting. But again, we keep the site simple and fast.
How does the site make money? I think that's something that's a mystery to most people.
Well, I'll start with the history. For example, end of '97, Microsoft Sidewalk approaches me about running banner ads. It's just me at this time. I could have lived just on the income from that one customer, since I prefer to live simply. The deal is that I said, no banner ads. I decided that they were kind of, a lot of banner ads were kind of dumb at the time and slowed the site down. Extending that, of course, no pop-ups or pop-unders for that matter. So there, in '99, I asked our community, as we made it into a real company, we asked the community, hey, what's the right way to pay the bills and maybe do a little better than that? And they said, charge people who are paying too much for less effective advertising. And the consensus was strongest that we should charge for job ads and also real estate ads. And people were also saying maybe car ads or whatever. So we charge for job ads way under market in 11 cities. We'll be adding 7 more shortly after extensive open discussions online. So that'll be 18 cities soon. We charge for apartment listings in New York City, where real estate, as you may know here, is a blood sport. Not much violence involved, but some. The great danger in New York real estate, of course, is that a guy like me who could go middle-aged crazy anytime, I might want to comb my hair forward. And I have friends looking out for me. So that's the principles. We listen to people, actually, and we act on that. And that's possibly somewhat unusual in business culture. Again, we talk to people, and then we act on that, maybe not as fast as we want. Some things take much longer than I'd like, but it works out. And sometimes it's for the better. One good thing about having not as much in the way of resources as we'd like, is that sometimes we don't squander a lot of resources on stuff that people don't want.
Mm-hmm. And where do you sort of see the site going? A lot of websites have ambitions to expand beyond their core mission. Is that something that you all think about, talk about? Site?
Now and then we consider other stuff, but we do one thing really well. We don't want to screw it up. And it does help people with everyday needs. You know, remember, we're basically a platform to help people with jobs, housing, and from another perspective, a place where people give each other a break. And somehow, over the years, we've worked with our community to build a culture of trust. That's one of the reasons I do customer service.
Mm-hmm. Talk a little bit about the impact that Craigslist has had on the media world in particular. There's a lot of journalists in this room and a lot of journalists here in Washington, and one refrain I hear from them, I'm sure you hear this every day, is that Craigslist has killed classified advertising revenue at newspapers, which has contributed to some of the financial problems that the papers are having. What's your response to that? And if you were in a newspaper publisher's shoes and seeing that happen, how would you respond to that?
I talk to publishers and editors at newspapers. They say their problems are of a different nature. When you talk to the industry analysts and people who pay attention to it, they say that we're a minor player regarding the problems of newspapers. I would recommend that to any news organizations, that what you want to do is play to the strengths of emerging journalism combined with the strengths of traditional journalism. Specifically, one of the greatest strengths of traditional journalism is fact-checking. There's also, professional editing and writing, but fact-checking is a big deal, and we need more and more of it. The disclaimer is I'm on the board of factchecked.org, factcheck.org's educational arm. I also think that, the new forms of media, blogging and so on, they could do a better job of fact-checking overall. On the other hand, the big strength of the new forms of media, the big one, is speaking truth to power, and traditional media could do a better job of that.
Back to the advertising question, is it the issue that you're saying that classified advertising revenue, in actuality, is not that big of a portion of what newspapers have depended on? It's primarily display ads and other kinds of things. Is that why it's not hurting them as much, or?
Well, what I hear specifically, and this is from analysts, including Dean Singleton, who heads the Denver Post and all that, he says national newspapers are doing fine. Very local papers are doing fine. It's the ones in the middle that have problems right now. A big problem, too, of course, is paper is too expensive to buy, print, and in particular distribute. Just to prevent some confusion in this part, I have gotten involved in some media and journalism adventures. That's just me doing it, not Craigslist.
Mm-hmm. If you were a media publisher, or you wanted to start a new news organization now, what would be the model? I think one of the struggles is that models are shifting, right? And so people who sort of started newspapers and magazines under the old model are having to migrate to sort of the web model. But if you were going to start from scratch, what would your ideal news organization look like? What would the business model be for it too?
I don't know. Right now, people are experimenting with a number of different models, like philanthropy, as in ProPublica.org. They do investigative journalism. There's sponsorship models, subscription models, pay-per-view models. No one has any answers regarding this. So different people are doing different experiments, and that's working out pretty well. I'm involved in newassignment.net, which is Jay Rosen's adventure out of NYU. I talk to the people at Huffington Post who are doing their own adventures, and they're working with Jay and others, for example, in their Off the Bus project involving presidential election coverage. No one has the answer. The deal is we keep people keep experimenting with these things, and no one does know. We'll know more after November 4th, after some of the excitement regarding the election starts to subside. I am very aware that when it comes to media and journalism, I'm very much an amateur. So what I do is talk to the people who really do know their stuff. Again, there's Jay Rosen, Jeff Jarvis, Ariana Huffington, Dan Gilmore, Ellen Miller at Sunlight Foundation. For that matter, I'm getting help from the guy who brought me here, this Michael Smith, who's helping me with public affairs and journalism in general. The deal is I am painfully aware of how much I don't know, and I'm learning a great deal. I'm learning a lot here about the lobbyist industry, for that matter. Oddly enough, I'm speaking up on behalf and in favor of the lobbyist industry, which I can elaborate on if it would amuse you.
Sure, absolutely. Are lobbyists misunderstood, or are they?
That's right. The poor lobbyists are misunderstood. And in all seriousness, let's say until a year or two ago, I had a uniformly bad image like most people in the U.S. Again, this is just me speaking for me. But frankly, I started to meet a lot of lobbyists, and in particular some pure public service ones who were the good guys. And then, about a year ago, I was at Consumers Union. They do consumer reports, for a board meeting, and I spoke with Anita Lowy and some of her people who told me about some of the good work lobbyists do. And I spoke to more people and found out that, there are some bad actors in the lobbyist profession, but the vast majority are just people trying to get a fair shake for their clients in the sausage factory. Again, I want to repeat this because I ain't kidding. Most lobbyists are just trying to get to do the best they can in the current legislative environment. Again, some lobbyists are pure public service folks, like the ones at Consumers Union, and disclaimer, I'm on the board, and the folks at Sunlight Foundation, disclaimer, I'm on the board there. So the deal is, again, always give people a break. And again, a core value that pretty much everyone shares and is responsible for the success of Craigslist. Treat people like you want to be treated. I'll be saying that a lot, and I follow through with it. But give people a break. Again, there are bad actors in the lobbyist profession. Jack Agramoff is an easy case. When it comes to finance and oil and telecom, I keep hearing names like some Davis guy, and I'm wondering what's happened to him. But the deal is that you want to give people a break and treat people like you want to be treated, which means there are industries where there are bad actors, but not a lot of them, so treat the rest of them fairly.
That's interesting. In light of that, what do you think when you hear sort of lobbyists becoming an issue in the presidential campaign? I mean, you see ads accusing, Senator McCain of having lobbyists in his inner circle, and lobbyists. I think there's an assumption lobbyist is a bad word in sort of the campaign.
Well, since I've been spending time with a lot of investigative journalists and the Sunlight Foundation people in particular, they've helped train me in terms of what to look for in terms of the, let's say, less savory lobbyists. Those are the ones who run, let's say, fake grassroots campaigns, AstroTurf sites like that, involved in areas like telecom or sometimes oil or finance industry. And I look at the lobbyists who are McCain's handlers, and he's run by some of the lobbyists who they're actively involved with the most unsavory of activities. So I think about that and wonder what's the deal. I've observed that there's a guy named Davis running McCain, who's one of his principal handlers, so I'm wondering what the deal is there. I take a look at the Barack campaign as well, looking for danger signs there, because I am a member of the tech and small business committees for Barack. Fortunately, I can do that with a clean conscience.
Tell a little bit about your political philosophy? I've heard you described as ultimately a libertarian.
Yeah, this is a surprise to people because people assume that from the site that we're liberals, but me just speaking for myself, oddly enough, I was at the Reason magazine offices yesterday for an interview. I'm kind of a libertarian moderate. The deal is that, I went through a period, especially as a kid, when I read the books by Ayn Rand and all that. That was like 30 years ago. You do customer service for 13 years or so. You change, and there's, let's say, if you want to be in touch with people throughout the whole country, doing customer service for a living, that's a way to do that. And as a result, like most people in my industry, even Marcos Melitsas, you may be a libertarian, but you're something else. I'm shopping for a label. Marcos calls himself a libertarian Democrat. Until I come up with a better label, I call myself a libertarian moderate, which I guess makes me a little bit right of center. So I'm still figuring out that stuff. I have had one major revelation in this context. Literally last week, I realized that what my job really is, both inside of Craigslist and outside in my sense of mission, I'm a community organizer. I'm not a traditional one. I'm the online kind of one, and I'm doing whatever it takes to help people who are smarter and more effective than me do what they need to do to give people a break.
Mm-hmm. I want to talk a little bit about voting, which I know is something you've been thinking a lot about. When you created the site, you were really thinking of how to do something in a more efficient way. The voting system, I think most people would say, is perhaps more complicated than it really ought to be. If you were to design the system of voting in this country from scratch, with sort of Craigslist simplicity principles in mind, how would you design it?
There's some obvious stuff, like maybe the Electoral College is a idea whose time has come and gone. But right now, well, a couple hundred years ago, we had these guys in the US who looked at what the ancient Romans done with their republic. It failed because of inadequate checks and balances. It failed because you had rich guys who could start a war for profit and vanity. I'm glad we fixed that. But they had something good going there. And a few hundred years ago, the British, with their glorious revolution, and bloggers like John Locke, they had a fairly good system invented which worked for them, hybridizing a monarchy with representative democracy. 200 years ago, we had some guys we call founders who created this system we have of representative democracy. It had some tragic flaws, many of which have been fixed. It had some checks and balances which used to work. And the idea is that the vision for many was this idea of direct democracy, where people could be heavily involved in the political process on a real-time basis. The internet, in principle, will allow us to do that. There's some ways to go. But first, the fundamental realization. Most people, including myself, don't want to be bothered by politics. We want to call 311 and get a pothole fixed, or figure out what license we got to get for something and maybe help us get it done. But most humans don't want to be involved. But so the idea is that the internet now is ready for a redesign of voting, both for our representatives, but also for more direct participation in the democratic process directly. I need a better term, but I'm calling this for the moment network grassroots democracy. 200 years ago, we got representative democracy and the opportunity for a grassroots democracy, but it's hard and it's strictly local because you work with the people in your neighborhood or community. 200 years after that, and now we have the beginnings of the technology and the human passion to actually get serious about this participatory democracy, another phrase people are using. We're seeing it right now in the election. We see one candidate who's gotten together 2 or 3 million people who, for the first time in human history, are directly involved in governance together. This has not happened before. This is like 1776 all over again. And it's real. And unfortunately, I've been reading history, so I see how this year, this moment, is a reflection. It's like 1776 redux. And we have a chance, a moment now, to change things. We're not going to get electronic online voting right away, because right now we have a big problem with badly done voting machines. We have the beginning of stuff. I've made specific proposals on CNN and in yesterday's Politico. For example, congressmen tell me that mass emails, which they can tell our formulators, they're not paying too much attention to that. But if you knew that if you were getting an email from a constituent, if you had a high expectation that it's really a constituent and not someone faking it, they'll pay attention to that. Well, that kind of technology is, the raw technology is available now. Maybe I should hint to some big company with a good public record that we can talk about implementing that. But the idea is now, the thing that we can do is get people to vote. And Google gets big props, as the kids say, by devoting some of the most precious online real estate to a pretty good voter registration link. That was 2 days ago, and that's a really big deal, and I really do appreciate it. I mean, I really want the kids to come out and vote. They're supposed to be the new millennial generation, the new civic engagement, maybe the next greatest generation. But part one is to get out there in large numbers, register to vote, and vote. Also, I need them to get off my lawn, but that's a different issue. So that's it. That's
turn
one
their music
request.
down.
That's one request of the kids. The other request of the kids, again, get out there and vote, because basically I need the kids to bail out our collective baby boomer butt.
Well, I'm sure we have some congressional staffers in the room, and I think what you just said is interesting. I mean, you can think of ways in which the internet's role in this campaign might affect how the next administration listens to people, seeks input from people. But if you're a member of Congress, what would you tell a member of Congress about how they could and should be using the net to interact better or communicate better with their constituents?
Well, let's push for that system which allows people to email their congresspeople on this credible basis. They're a constituent. That'll make a difference. That form of communication can filter out a lot of the noise. I think Chuck Schumer said he got like 10,000 emails on the bailout package. And that's overwhelming. But if you're getting 10,000 emails from known constituents, that's something that's valuable. Other areas in which, people got to have staff members who are looking at what's happening on the net, what's the buzz, on specialized discussion boards, focusing on them, on Twitter for that matter. And I've recently attempted to Twitter like a teenager. The teenager part of that has failed, but overall probably succeeded. And that's another mechanism where they can stay in contact with people. Beyond that, and within the realm of 2009 technology, would be the idea of discussion boards where your community could filter up and down good feedback, good suggestions, and reputations. The deal is if a congressman was looking at a bulletin board for his constituents, where the authenticated constituents could filter out the bad stuff, filter up the good stuff, that is a big step towards that vision of direct democracy. It's not the same thing as online voting, because that requires very strict authentication and so on. But that's a big step right there. The idea is that the internet is a big part of how Americans now work with each other, how they collaborate, and they allow leaders to stay in touch. Not just politics, but think of any company that you work in. When people ascend the corporate ladder, they get out of touch. The idea is that in hierarchies, people tell their boss what they want to hear, and then the boss tells the boss what they want to hear. So communication breaks down really fast. That's true in business. It's true in politics. That's why any kind of leader needs to be using the internet, needs to have a sense of what it's about, maybe have a direct report who's monitoring things, bypassing the hierarchy and saying to the leader, hey, here's what's going on. So even now, any politician or any corporate leader needs to know the net. If not, they have no chance of being in touch.
I want to just mention that we're going to take some questions from the audience, and we have a microphone back here. I'm going to ask probably one or two more questions, but if folks who have questions want to line up at the microphone there, and we'll then move to questions. I want to just turn to public policy. What issues on the sort of public policy front do you personally, does Craigslist care about? And it's very unlikely that anything else will happen this year significant on the policy front apart from the economic rescue plan, but Congress will, of course, return in January. We'll have a new administration. What are some of the things that you'd like to see Congress take action on the policy front?
This is just me talking now, not Craigslist, because right now some of the concerns we might have are, to a large extent, addressed by existing law. Beyond that, and I'm going to try to stick with things that I know something about, which I find to be a good idea. One issue, for example, has to do with transparency and accountability. And this is the Sunlight Foundation kind of stuff. The vision, and this is largely articulated best by Jeff Jarvis, everything that government does should be disclosed online. There are some things which can't be, obviously, personal matters, matters of genuine national security, as opposed to the fake stuff. There's that kind of stuff. So everything should be online. For example, it would be great if online you could figure out the role that money plays in Congress. For example, what's the role of campaign contributions and what legislation or contracts do campaign contributions get? That's being done now by the network of sites that Sunlight Foundation is fostering, like maplight.org. It's happening now. One thing which can be done today, easily, is the idea is that right now the House of Representatives and the Senate do disclose campaign financing, so we can take a look at it and see what happens. Well, the idea there is that they do it on paper now. Big deal. You're not going to be able to search paper in real life. The House of Representatives, though, now submits all that electronically so that it can be searched online, and Sunlight Network does provide easy-to-use database tools to search it online. It's proposed in the Senate, and almost everyone is for it. It's called S.223. The thing is, for reasons unknown, McConnell and John Ensign out of Nevada have suspended the bill. It looks like they're protecting someone. They're hiding something. I figure that the leader of the Republican Party has the opportunity to tell them, hey, just pass the thing. Not doing so creates an impression that there's something to hide, and I'd sure like to get that passed. Today would be okay. And to take a look at pass223.com, that'll get you the idea. But again, right now it appears, speaking like a cop, and I spend a lot of time with cops these days, and DAs, it kind of looks like someone's being protected. Tangent there is that part of my day job is, in fact, trying to do the right thing a lot for cops and victims while respecting due process and the rights of the accused. A lot of people here are old enough to remember when we had rule of law in this country, and the Constitution, and we act as if it's still in effect.
Just to follow up on your point about communicating with cops and DAs, how do you approach the problem of people using Craigslist to do bad things, whether it's illegal activity or perhaps a lesser variety copyrighted works? How do you approach it? What's your system, and how big of a problem is it?
Well, I appreciate the brevity of the question. The deal is that people will abuse our site or will abuse any kind of open site. Our first line of protection is this flagging for removal system we have, and others have copied now. The deal is if you see something that's wrong on our site, you can flag it for removal. If other people agree with you and flag it, it's removed automatically. It's a voting system. And there was this guy who commented on it saying that democracy is a lousy form of government, but it's the best we have. I don't think Churchill's writing much anymore, but I think he got it right there. So there's a lot of there's a lot of ad hoc things that people can do wrong on our site. There's petty bickering. There's spam ads, which we get rid of in large part. We have more going on, some of which we can't talk about, some of which we will be able to talk about in the near future, because we've made some big inroads into this. And we're going to be announcing some really big ones in the near future. But for now, right now, if something criminal happens on our site, it's just unacceptable. We work with cops and victims to take care of it. People learn that we're good at that, at the simple forensics required to take care of things. In past years, before cops were educated on IP addresses and the ECPA, Electronic Communications Privacy Act, I would actually spend time on the phone calling them. And I actually do get called because I've spread my phone number throughout the country through the Secret Service Electronic Crime Task Force meetings. I haven't done anything like that actively for about, I'm guessing about 9 days when I spoke to the guy who runs the New York version of that. The deal is, bad stuff happens, we're serious about it.
I think we'll go ahead and turn to audience questions. Did you have a question? Yeah, go ahead and just introduce yourself too, and if you've ever bought or sold anything on Craigslist, mention what you've bought or sold.
I got my current job as a community organizer for artists in over 65 countries through Craigslist, so thank you for that. And I have a question. You've been talking a lot about Craigslist, but what's your long-term vision for the Craigslist Foundation?
As a general rule, I have very little vision. Again, I'll mention that most of Craigslist is based on community feedback. For the foundation, the idea is that, and my role in it is pretty marginal. Frankly, I'm the glamorous figurehead, and don't hate me because I'm beautiful. But the idea is the foundation is to help other nonprofits be more effective. We run these boot camps. We have a day of classes for nonprofits, like grant writing, better presentation, that kind of thing. And the vision of it is that we can build a site which can be a really, really good resource for nonprofits in terms of basics and advanced stuff for how to run a nonprofit effectively. Again, grant writing is something that small nonprofits need a lot of help with, and presentation skills, because if you're any kind of organization, you need to be able to talk about what you're doing in a relatively few seconds, under a minute. Otherwise, the people who can help you out with funding or whatever are going to stop listening after about 45 seconds. I try not to do that, and yet my greatest fault seems to be impatience.
Okay, next question.
First, I have to thank you because I think at one point or another in my life, I've clicked on every link on that homepage on Craigslist.
Thank you.
And my girlfriend is currently buying up all the used furniture on Craigslist. So thanks again. It's a little cheaper than IKEA. I have to ask you, though, you mentioned the sausage making that goes on in that pretty dome behind you, and how with lobbyists, a lot of good people there, it's really a corrupt system that's making them act the way they do. And I know you're really big on disclosure and especially electronic forms of disclosure. That's great. would you be willing to go one step further and advocate for any, fundamental reforms to the system besides just transparency, any public financing or campaign reform?
What I'm doing in that regards, in terms of actual reform, aside from anything partisan, take a look at Change Congress from Larry Lessig. He's this guy from Stanford who's really serious about what does it take to change things. It does involve genuine public financing as opposed to, the kind of system we have right now, which doesn't seem to be working very well. The deal is right now it takes ordinary people, including myself, to vote with our dollars sometime, and that's one of the current big uses of the net. So there, I am interested in that genuine kind of public financing. I'm very much interested in the accountability and transparency stuff, and I'm promoting the work of other folks who are doing that kind of thing, learning from them. For example, I'm working with the Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America to learning from them on what it takes to get stuff passed. Like in my own microscopic way, I help them pass the new GI Bill, and next up is mass approval of GI medical claims and making sure that the veterans get paid, the active duty soldiers get paid what they're owed, because frankly, they're not.
Take the next question.
Thank you. Not sure if I've bought anything recently, but you mentioned the telecom industry several times as one of the groups doing unsavory things. What would you suggest for that industry and for the government to do to either deregulate further or regulate that industry for the 21st century?
Regarding telecoms, first thing is listen to your employees. I work with abuse handling departments and other folks at a lot of telecoms. And they're all for stuff like net neutrality and all that. I really do believe in a lot of the folks there. And in fact, a lot of them are really talented and very overwhelmed, hardworking people. Tangentially, I'll mention, as I've suggested publicly for the big telecoms, please fully staff your abuse handling departments, because they're not staffed. And I need the help, frankly, in terms of my day job. Beyond that, the idea is that there's issues which are really important, which to preserve basic American values, let's get behind them. Like, there's this issue called net neutrality, which basically says, hey, telecoms, you make your money by using public resources, like the airwaves or rights of way, that kind of stuff. In return for that, we want you to respect our values, which include like fair play, level playing field, that kind of thing. And that means don't extend special privileges to people who want to run a server to get that served faster than anyone else. It is that simple. And there I'm speaking as a computer guy. The nerd stuff is for real. I've grown out of much of it, but it's not hard to tell. And the deal is that just be honest with the public as well, because there are lobbyists who are being paid by telecoms who run these AstroTurf sites, which have corrupted the discussion. Frankly, the people pro and against net neutrality, the real people and the companies and the organizations aren't that far apart, but there are lobbyists who have artificially contrived argument and dissension to prolong the argument, when actually the two sides are much closer together than we think. There's some real disagreement, but not like the lobbyists have artificially created. I understand, and people here can help me out, that if a lobbyist picks a fight and gets people mad with each other, that prolongs the argument. And I understand that lobbyists bill for those hours. So maybe there's something in there which we can work together to fix.
Those misunderstood lobbyists.
Any
again.
suggestions for the next administration specifically?
Excuse me?
Any specific suggestions for the next administration?
We just need to restore that level playing field. We need to do what we can to get broadband to everyone, just like we have a phone dial tone to everyone. The phone companies in the past, working with government, did good stuff, extend, and again, playing fair and acting in a way that follows through with these, what I feel are fundamental American values. The deal is you want to give people a break, you want to treat people like you want to be treated, and you don't want to leave people out. The internet is about inclusion. Growing up as a nerd, I got to taste what it felt like to be left out, and rather than just being irritated by that and bitter about the popular kids, I figure I'll do better. And people on the net, the culture is include everyone.
Next question.
Hi, Craig. My name is Shashi Belamkonda. My official title at Network Solutions is Social Media Swami. And the question I wanted to ask was, in an earlier life, I used to be an executive chef, so I totally relate to the term where you said you would, if you're in customer service or jobs like that, you're totally connected with people every day. The question I have is, growing up, what did you think you would become, and did you change careers anytime?
Well, there was a time when I wanted to be a paleontologist because dinosaurs are cool, if you're a nerd. And by the way, I really did wear a plastic pocket protector in high school. And I really did have thick black glasses taped together. Later on, I wanted to go into physics, quantum, theoretical physics. A year in college made me realize that if I wanted a job someday, well, I was already good with computers. So I got a couple degrees in computer sciences. But then after turning Craigslist into a real company in '99, starting to hire tech people who are all much better than me, well, I had already been doing customer service for a long time, and that's what I do now. Again, I do realize that in terms of scope, what I really am now is a community organizer, and that'll work for me. We'll see what trouble I get into future, but I will be doing customer service to some significant degree forever.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Aaron Zolman. My apartment came from Craigslist. There are a couple tricks that Craigslist can do to keep its community controlled that don't seem to apply to democracy, right? You have anonymous posting, but there are no anonymous campaign donations. You have automated moderation, but public policy has the First Amendment. So is there a place for things like moderation and anonymity in public discourse? How do those things apply to the larger community?
Well, moderation, I think, will be done in, let's say, governmental discussion boards, but I think a lot of it will be done by the community. That is that if you look at, for that matter, slashdot.org, you'll see where people can work together to push up the comments of people who are saying smart, good things and make much less visible the bad stuff. I mean, you will need people to get rid of stuff which is genuinely criminal or defamatory. But there, I do think there needs to be no anonymity because people will be, you need to find out that people are legitimately citizens and they're not voting often and early, which is to say they only have one authenticatable, real identity online. In that context, I don't want to see anonymity. On the other hand, for whistleblowers, you do need anonymity because, for example, in the current executive environment where whistleblowing has been pretty much neutralized, I mean, if you blow the whistle, you can be in some really deep trouble that way. We do need anonymity for whistleblowers. We do need anonymity for people who could get in pretty serious trouble. Balancing that, I do think for the most part, on the web as it evolves, there will be accountability and distinct identity, but there's always going to be a role for anonymity, I think. The biggest need will be when it comes to when it comes to whistleblowing. Because we need more whistleblowing, a lot more whistleblowing, not less.
We'll take one last question.
Hi, I'm Emily Lehman with Washingtonian.com. And one of the goals of our website is to take our sort of largely passive readership and translate them into a more engaged community. So my question for you is, do you have any tips or advice? Because I think you've been largely successful in that. So do you have any tips and advice for us to be able to do that, to make that transition happen?
The hard part seems to be genuine, serious engagement over a long period of time. That is, you'll have discussion boards. You should have staff members engaging, talking to people, and then showing people that you're looking at suggestions and then acting on them, doing something real about them. Again, not just talking about engagement and listening to people, but getting serious about it. That's the simplest thing to do. It does involve some of your time. It has some side benefits, like it increases your own personal branding, I guess. But this will also get the attention of your biggest fans, and they'll help out, and they'll help out other customers. This applies across a broad range of industry. For example, when it comes to product support discussion boards, people get passionate about products, and if a company is serious about this and is engaged, it will help motivate fans of the products to be engaged also, and they're going to do a lot of selling for you as well. So I have a feeling this kind of engagement will be critical for the success of companies in the future. You will have to have a thick skin. At times you're going to see some really ugly stuff, and I see it every day, and I'm afraid I mean that literally every day, because I've worked pretty much every day for the last 13 years or more. And I, especially when moderating our discussion boards, I see stuff which I'll never be able to forget, and I wish I could.
Just one last question. As somebody who's spending more time in Washington, but still not a Washington insider, what is it about Washington that frustrates you the most?
Remember, I really am a nerd. I'm impatient, and I still have an unfortunate tendency to occasionally fall back onto logic and reason. And it's just hard for me to understand a bit how and why the sausage is made. I can get it, like with Mike's help, and I can pay attention to things and how it happens, but it's frustrating. Again, I can't understand why today the Senate can't pass S.223, that transparency thing. I don't get it on a visceral level, although now I've learned how to understand it and help people out on that intellectual level, in my head. That's the hard part to understand, but that's why I get help from people. That's why I talk to people who know a lot more about it than I am, and that's why my role is, is for speaking up for people and organizations who are doing really good things, really smart things. And that seems to be what makes sense in my role. I mean, I have no interest in office. I have no real interest in politics. My interest is in this year, in this moment, when we have a chance to, to not replace representative democracy in any form, but to complement it with some real grassroots stuff for the next 200 years. That's a big deal. And again, that's why the kids got to get out, register, and actually vote. And of course, that's another favor I have of them too.
Well, I want to thank you, Craig, for a great, very interesting conversation this morning, and thank our audience for some great questions. Just a reminder that our next talk will be on October 15th with John Palfrey, the Berkman Center,
Well, I forget, but I won't be around too long right now, but my email address really is craig@craigslist.org. I do my best to check out what's stuck in my spam folder, but that's my real address.
So email away, and thank you again for joining us, and please join me in thanking Craig.